the same. I opened my eyes, tried to move, and there it was again. That deep, stabbing pain right in my hip. It wasn't sharp like a prick. It was more of a constant pressure, as if something inside me was slowly wearing down. Turning over in bed was hard. Getting up was hard. Sometimes I had to sit on the edge and stay there for a while, waiting for my body to respond. At first, I thought it was the way I slept. I changed my mattress. I changed my pillow. I tried sleeping on the other side. Nothing. Then I started to think it was normal. That at this age, waking up with aches was simply part of the deal. One of those small reminders that the years have gone by. But something inside me didn't add up. I couldn't accept that living with pain was normal. I wondered if there was something I could do. Something simple. Something natural. Something that didn't mean living on pills. So I started to observe my body. I started to listen to what it was telling me. I searched. I read. I asked around. And I finally found something. Not a pill. Not a miracle cream. Not an expensive surgery. No. It was a routine so simple I doubted it would work. But I tried it. And what happened in just 5 days changed my life. Today I want to tell you exactly what I did, step by step. I'm not saying it's a universal cure, but if you also wake up each day with that same pain in your hip, you deserve to know what helped me. By the way, I'd love to know if you've also felt hip pain upon waking. How old are you, and from which city or country are you watching me? Leave it in the comments. I'd love to read you. All right then, let's begin. How it all began. The first symptoms. I remember perfectly the first time I felt it. I woke up like any other morning, and as I turned to get out of bed, a stab in my hip stopped me cold. It was a dry, deep pain, as if the bone had hardened overnight. I stayed still for a few seconds, took a deep breath, and the first thing I thought was, I must have slept wrong. Nothing serious. Maybe the position, maybe the mattress. That morning I walked a little slower, a bit stiff, but after a while it passed. I didn't give it importance. As we sometimes do, I let it go. I thought the next day I'd be better, but it wasn't so. The next morning, the pain came back. This time a little more intense. I felt it as I sat up, as I put my feet on the floor. It was hard to walk to the kitchen. I held onto the walls, not wanting to admit it. I didn't want to accept that something was changing. By the third day, the pain was already waiting for me before I opened my eyes. I woke up more from discomfort than from habit. I felt it when I sat down, when I bent over, even when I climbed a single step. And it wasn't just physical, it was mental. Every movement came with a silent question. What if this doesn't go away? What if it gets worse? I wasn't alone in this. I met Claire, a woman of 76 years, strong, active, one of those people who always smile even if something hurts. It began the same way for Claire. A small annoyance she ignored at first. She told me she had been a teacher for more than 30 years and had an almost professional tolerance for pain. But little by little, mornings turned into tests. To get dressed, she had to sit down twice. To cook, she needed breaks. To sleep, she had to change sides over and over, looking for a position that wouldn't make her wake up at midnight. Both Claire and I fell into that silent stage of chronic pain, when it's not unbearable yet, but it's already starting to change the way you live. You don't walk the same. You don't get up with energy. You stop making morning plans because you know you need time to warm up the body. The worst part wasn't the pain itself, but the feeling of being trapped in an uncomfortable routine, as if the body had aged 10 years overnight. And we didn't know what to do. That's when I understood that ignoring it wasn't an option. And Claire did too. We had to do something. But first, we made the most common mistake. Trying 1,000 things without really understanding the problem. What I tried, that didn't work. After several mornings of that stabbing pain in my hip, I decided to do what almost everyone does. look for a quick fix. The first thing was the cream, the one that promises immediate relief for muscle and joint pain. I put it on before bed, hoping that something would change the next day. And yes, something changed, for a few minutes. I felt a slight warmth, a superficial relief. But as soon as I moved, the pain was still there, waiting in the same corner of my body. Then I tried direct heat, heating pads, compresses, even an electric blanket. The heat relaxed me, that's true, but only while I stayed still. When I got up, the stiffness returned, as if nothing had happened. It was like trying to put out a fire with a damp towel. It only covered the problem. I also turned to painkillers. I took a pill in the morning, another at night. They calmed me a little, but I started to feel disconnected, with an upset stomach and a heavy head. Something in me knew I couldn't depend on that every day. It wasn't a solution, it was just a way to mask the pain. And then I did what many do nowadays. I went online. I found everything: advice, exercises, diets, testimonials. But every page said something different. Some recommended stretches. Others said not to move much. Some suggested expensive supplements. Others said it was enough to drink more water. The result was confusion and anxiety. A friend recommended a brace. Another told me to try acupuncture. A neighbor brought me some natural pills she had bought online. Nothing seemed to really work. Everything was temporary, superficial. I wanted a solution, not a patch. Worst of all was the feeling that my body was failing me. I felt older than I was, more limited, slower. I started to avoid morning plans, to put off simple tasks like making the bed or going out for a walk. And with each passing day, that uncomfortable thought grew stronger. Could this be the beginning of something more serious? What if it never gets better? Claire went through the same thing. She told me she had tried everything from salt baths to essential oils, that her daughter had bought her an expensive massager. Nothing helped more than 1 or 2 days. There were mornings when she didn't even want to leave her room. She confessed through tears, "I'm afraid my hips are failing me forever. What if I never walk like before again?" That was the first time I felt that the pain wasn't only in the body. It was also in the mind, in the uncertainty, in the constant doubt about whether we were doing the right thing or simply wasting time. I knew something had to change, but this time, I didn't want to keep trying things without understanding. I wanted to know what was really causing that pain. And that's when I decided to do something different, understanding the real cause of the pain. When the pain had become routine, I decided I needed a real explanation. No more guesses, no more random remedies. I went to see a physical therapist recommended by a friend, a calm, older man with lots of experience. He listened without interrupting, asked me a few simple questions, and then told me something I won't forget. "Your body isn't failing you. It's talking to you, but you're ignoring it." I was surprised. I asked what he meant, and he explained something so clearly that everything started to make sense. He told me that with age, many people start to move less, sometimes from fatigue, sometimes from fear of falling, sometimes simply out of habit. The problem, he said, is that when we stop moving certain parts of the body, they weaken, and when they weaken, they hurt. He explained that the hips are among the areas most punished by a sedentary lifestyle. We spend a lot of time sitting, and over the years the muscles around the hip lose strength, tighten, shorten. That makes the joint less stable, less protected. The result is inflammation, stiffness, and pain, especially upon waking, when the whole body is cold and inactive. He also talked to me about posture. With age, many people begin to lean forward without realizing it. That misalignment makes all the weight load onto the wrong places. The hips start to compensate for what the back and knees no longer do. That generates continuous pressure, and over time, the pain appears without our knowing why. He told me that in many cases, the pain doesn't come from a single cause, but from several small things that add up over time. A bit less exercise, a bit more weight, a poorly maintained posture, a diet that no longer helps to reduce inflammation. It all adds up, and the result is that quiet pain that every morning reminds us that we're alive, but also that something isn't right. Claire went to the physical therapist a few days later. She called me excited because they had told her exactly the same thing. She thought she had something serious in the bone, but it turned out to be muscle tension and lack of movement. Nothing that couldn't improve with a good daily routine. That was when something clicked inside me. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim of the pain, but part of the problem, and also part of the solution. It wasn't that my body was failing. It was that I had stopped caring for it as it deserved. My body was asking me for something I was ignoring: attention, movement, consistency. Not miracles, not pills, just care. And I decided to give it. After understanding that the pain wasn't the enemy but a message, I knew I had to do something different. I didn't want more temporary fixes. I wanted to change something from within. The physical therapist gave me a simple routine, very easy to follow. He told me, do this 5 days in a row without fail, then tell me how it goes. At first I doubted. It didn't seem like much, but I had already tried everything without results, so I had nothing to lose by trying. Every morning as soon as I woke up, I sat up in bed. Without standing yet, I started with small circular movements of my ankles. Then I stretched my legs forward, gently, without forcing. Then I placed one foot over the other knee and carefully pressed down to stretch the hip. It was a basic stretch, but I could feel that sleepy area waking up. I did it on both sides, unhurried. Then I stood up slowly, leaning on the headboard, and did some rocking movements, one foot forward, the other back, as if walking without moving ahead. That helped activate the hips, to lubricate the joint, as he said. After that, I had a big glass of water with a few drops of lemon. The physical therapist insisted that hydration also helped reduce inflammation. I had never given importance to water in the morning, but I decided to do it. Before leaving the room, I took 5 or 6 slow steps down the hallway. I focused on walking upright, without hunching, stepping firmly, breathing deeply. It wasn't heavy exercise, but in just 15 minutes, I could already feel my body getting going, as if the pain didn't have time to fully settle in. During the day, I avoided staying seated for too long. If I watched television, I got up every 20 minutes. At nap time, instead of lying down completely, I sat in a comfortable chair and kept my back straight. It was a change in habits more than a therapy. But the most important thing was that I did it every day. No excuses. Claire started her routine too. At first it was hard for her, especially getting out of bed to move. She told me, "But that's exactly why it hurts. How am I supposed to stretch when I'm in pain?" But little by little, day after day, she noticed that the pain arrived later and left faster. There were no fireworks. There were no miracles. But on the 4th day, I realized I no longer woke up with the same fear. I didn't open my eyes expecting pain, and on the 5th day, for the first time in a long time, I got up without that heavy blow in my hip. That's when I understood. I didn't need magical solutions. I just needed to listen, to move, to care, every day, even if only a little. The 5th day was different from the very first second. I opened my eyes as usual, but something had changed. I didn't feel that sharp stab that had accompanied me on so many mornings. I stayed still for a few seconds, waiting for it to show up. But it didn't. I moved one leg. Nothing. I turned my body. Still no pain. I sat on the edge of the bed, a little afraid, as if my body were going to betray me at the last moment. But it didn't. I stood up without needing to brace myself against the wall. I took a few steps, and then I knew. Something was working. It wasn't a miracle cure. The pain hadn't vanished completely. But for the first time, I was the one in control, not the pain. I walked calmly down the hallway to the kitchen. I made my breakfast without pauses, without that usual discomfort of having to lean on the countertop. I felt lighter, stronger, But above all, I felt free. My body wasn't shouting. It was responding. And the strangest thing was that not only my mobility changed, my mood changed. I started to notice more energy, less mental fatigue, more desire to do things. I set about organizing a shelf I'd been putting off for weeks. I went out to water the plants without thinking about how many steps it would take. I felt capable, and it had been a long time since I felt that way. I called Claire to tell her. She answered with a voice that sounded more awake than ever. She told me that very morning she had gone back to walking around the square like she used to. She walked slowly, with short steps, but she walked. She greeted the neighbors again. She breathed fresh air again without fear of the next step. She confessed she almost cried when she realized what she'd been missing. We realized something very important. For a long time, we underestimated small changes. We thought that if there wasn't an immediate dramatic shift, then it wasn't worth it. But the body doesn't always need big solutions. Sometimes it just needs consistency, routine, patience. We had been taught to look for quick fixes, to silence pain with pills, but no one taught us to stop, to observe what we do every day, to care for the simplest movements. And yet, that was what made the difference. Today I can say that not all pain requires medicine. Sometimes it requires attention, and attention was what I decided to give myself. 5 days, 15 minutes each morning. And with that, I regained something I thought I'd lost: the freedom to move without fear, to start the day with confidence, to be myself again. Today, looking back, I realized something very simple, yet powerful. It all began when I decided to listen to my body. That hip pain didn't show up to punish me, but to warn me, to tell me that something needed attention. Instead of keeping on ignoring it or hiding it behind a pill, I did something different. I tried a gentle solution, without aggression, without haste, without expecting magical results. Just 5 days. 5 mornings in which I took 15 minutes to move carefully, to breathe, to hydrate, to wake up the areas that time had been dimming little by little. And it worked. It wasn't luck. It was consistency. It was listening to what my body had been trying to tell me for weeks. Today, I'm not here to promise cures or secret formulas, but I do want to remind you of something important. It's never too late to feel well. Never. Sometimes the solution isn't in what's complicated or expensive or unknown. Sometimes the solution is closer than you think, in a small routine, in a new habit, in a daily decision. That's why I want to ask you, have you also dealt with this kind of hip pain? What has worked for you? What have you tried? Leave it in the comments. I'm sure your experience can help many other people who are going through the same thing. And if you know someone who's suffering with hip pain, a friend, a family member, a neighbor, share this video with them. You might help them more than you imagine. See you in the next one. And remember, your body isn't failing you. It's just waiting for you to listen.